Good morning. I am Pastor Andrew, and greetings to you from the Modesto Church of the Brethren, online version for June 14th of 2020. If you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. I stream today from my home and pray that you are all staying well during this time and always. Please note that you can type greetings and converse with others while you are watching in the search bar or the comment bar below. You can also message or email this page with any questions, comments, joys, concerns, or prayer requests that you would like to share privately. This week's Zoom Bible study will be on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Please email me or this page if you would be interested in joining or if you would like to set up a new day or time. I would like to thank Linda W., Elaine, Evan, and Allison for singing and playing for today, and for Bonnie M. for leading the children's time. We are looking for one person to help with worship for next week. We are looking for someone who might be able to lead our worship or our children's time. So please contact me if you are able to help out with that. Today's sermon is entitled "The Church Begins to Grow," Part 2, based upon Acts chapter 17, verses 1 through 9. Now let us pray these words created by the Reverend Mindy Welton Mitchell on revolution.org. Almighty God, we confess our frustration and our anger. We confess at times we should have held our tongue and didn't. We confess at times we are distracted by things that will not matter tomorrow, and they consume our time today. We confess that in our uncertainty, instead of trusting in you, we turn to the voices of fear. Forgive us. Call us into accountability to remind us that at times we say things online we would not say in person. Call us to repent, to turn to empathy and understanding, and to seek your wisdom. In this world that has turned upside down, we remember that you are our rock and our salvation. You are what grounds us, keeps us steady, and will see us through. Remind us that you have commanded us to love our neighbors as ourselves, even the ones who irritate us. For you loved us first, and with our faults and shortcomings. May we turn our hearts to you and be filled with love for one another. Holy One, as we turn to you, turn our hearts to each other. May we reach out and check in with those we haven't heard from, to offer a listening ear and to share the good news. May we seek to learn how we might pray for each other, how we might help one another, and how we can reflect your image in the world. Holy One, shine in us your love, so we might be shining lights of your reflection around the world. Amen. Our first hymn for today is "Here in This Place." Just a moment.
All right, we had some technical difficulties, so I'm going to fill in here. We're going to be singing this a cappella, so I expect to hear y'all sing with me. Here in this place, new light is streaming. Now is the darkness vanished away. See in this space our fears and our dreamings, brought here to you in the light of this day. Gather us in the lost and forsaken, gather us in the blind and the lame. Call to us now and we shall awaken, we shall arise at the sound of our name. We are the young, our lives are a mystery. We are the old who yearn for your face. We have been sung throughout all of history, called to be light to the whole human race. Gather us in the lost and forsaken, gather us in the proud and the strong. Give us a heart so meek and so lowly. Give us a courage to enter the song. Here we will take the wine and the water. Here we will take the bread of new birth. Here you shall call your sons and your daughters. Call us anew to be salt for the earth. Give us to drink the wine of compassion. Give us to eat the bread that is you. Nourish us well and teach us to fashion lives that are holy and hearts that are true. Not in the dark of buildings confining, not in some heaven light years away, but here in this place a new light is shining. Now is the kingdom, now is the day. Gather us in and hold us forever. Gather us in and make us your own. Gather us all peoples together. Fire of love in our flesh and our bones.
We'll be having today's scripture reading, and then that will follow with our children's time with Bonnie. So again, our scripture for today is Acts chapter 17, verses 1 through 9. Just a moment. After leaving Philippi and passing through Amphipolis and Apollonia, Paul and Silas came to Thessalonica. There was a Jewish synagogue there. As he had done in other cities, Paul attended the synagogue and presented arguments based on the Hebrew scriptures that the anointed had to suffer and rise from the dead. Paul asked, "Who is this suffering and rising anointed one I am proclaiming to you? He is Jesus." He came back the next 2 Sabbaths, repeating the same pattern. Some of the ethnically Jewish people from the synagogue were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas. Even more devout Greeks who had affiliated with Judaism came to believe, along with quite a few of the city's leading women. Seeing this movement growing, the unconvinced Jewish people became protective and angry. They found some ruffians hanging out in the marketplaces and convinced them to start a riot. Soon a mob formed and the whole city was seething with tension. The mob was going street by street looking for Paul and Silas, who were nowhere to be found. The mob was frustrated when the mob came to the house of a man named Jason, now known as a believer. They grabbed him and some other believers they found there and dragged them to the city officials. The mob called out, "These people, they're political agitators turning the world upside down. They've come here to our fine city, and this man Jason has given them sanctuary and made his house a base for their operations. We want to expose their real intent. They are trying to overturn Caesar's sensible decrees. They're saying that Jesus is king, not Caesar. Of course, this disturbed the crowd at large and the city officials especially, so they demanded bail from Jason and the others before releasing them. The believers waited until dark and then sent Paul and Silas off to Berea. I now welcome Bonnie to share with us a children's time.
Good morning. I wanted to share a book today that would remind us about love and about how it spreads through generations, like from grandparents, from even before great-great-grandparents, and across all kinds and colors of families. We're all connected through shared experiences, and the more we honor and remember those shared experiences, the more our love can grow. This book is called When I Am Old with You. The story is by Angela Johnson, and the pictures are by David Soman. When I am old with you, Granddaddy, I will sit in a big rocking chair beside you and talk about everything. An old dog will sit by my feet, and I'll swat flies all day. We'll go fishing too, Granddaddy, down by that pond with the big flat rocks all around. We can fish beside the pond or take that old canoe out. We'll eat out of the picnic basket all day and we won't catch any fish. But that's all right, Granddaddy. When I am old with you, Granddaddy, we will play cards all day underneath that old tree by the road. We'll drink cool water from a jug and wave at all the cars that go by. We'll play cards till the lightning bugs shine. And we won't mind that we forgot to keep score, Granddaddy. When I am old with you, Granddaddy, we will open up that old cedar chest and try on all the old clothes that your Granddaddy left you. We can look at the old pictures and try to imagine the people. It might make us cry, but that's okay. In the mornings, Granddaddy, we will cook bacon for breakfast, and that's all. We can eat it on the porch, too. In the evening, we can roast corn on a big fire and invite everyone to come over and eat it. They'll all dance and play cards and talk about everything. Oops, we're going to go to the ocean as soon as Bonnie finds the page. When I am old with you, Granddaddy, we can take a trip to the ocean. Have you ever seen the ocean, Granddaddy? We'll walk on the hot sand and throw rocks on the waves. When our trip is over, we'll follow the ocean as far as we can so we'll never forget it. When I am old with you, Granddaddy, we will get on the tractor and ride through the fields together. We'll see the trees in the distance and remember when this field was a forest. But we won't be sad, though. Granddaddy, when I am old with you, we will take long walks and speak to all the people who walk by us. We'll know them all, Granddaddy, and they'll know us. At the end of our walk, when we're tired, Granddaddy, I will sit in a big rocking chair beside you. The end. And since we can't link pinkies, let's just sit where we are and close our eyes and imagine our favorite, simple, fun times with our family members. And let's thank God who connects us across generations, across experiences, across the color of our skin, to a place of love and peace and togetherness. We are all one, together with the one amazing God. Peace be with you, and amen.
Thank you, Bonnie, for that beautiful story and the reminder of our commonness. Before we begin with the sermon time, I just wanted to remind you that following the sermon time will be a time for sharing of joys, concerns, and prayer requests that you would like to share with us in the comments section. So feel free to do that. I'm going to share the screen with you very briefly. And explain it here in just a moment. Last week, we had the church growing through its expansion into Ethiopia through a eunuch who was the queen's treasurer and who had an encounter with the apostle Philip, in which he was baptized before returning to his home. Today, we have the apostle Paul journeying with Silas from Philippi to the city of Thessalonica. Paul was a zealous evangelist who it is estimated traveled over 10,000 miles on his trips. And we have to remember that the majority of his trips would have either been taken by foot or by ship. So to say that he traveled over 10,000 miles is quite an amazing accomplishment, especially for that day and time. Thessalonica, and I'm going to attempt to point at it here. Thessalonica was an important city. It was the capital of the Roman province of Macedonia, and it was located at the intersection of two major roads, one shown here in red and the other here in green. These two major roads led to the eastern part of the empire, between Byzantium and beyond, and also these roads helped to facilitate trade between the east and the west. And they were also the routes that Paul used in his travels as he went from one city to the next, seeking to establish communities of believers. The resulting trade that was brought on these roads brought wealth to the empire. It also brought wealth to the city itself, and it appears within Luke's writing for today that some of it has made its way into the community of believers. And while the city itself was part of the Roman Empire, it was more Greek in its behaviors than being strictly Roman. And its attitudes, its ethos, how it carried itself, and how it looked and it viewed its citizenship. Luke writes in the section of scripture that we read in chapter 17, that there were Greeks who had been attracted to Judaism, and these were one of the groups that were also drawn to Paul and Silas's message once they came to the city. But as shown by the mob's charges, this is still a Roman city whose loyalties lie on the side of the emperor. And that's an important fact that we need to remember. Because as Paul and Silas, according to their custom, as Luke records, go to the local synagogue over the course of 3 weeks to evangelize and to find converts with whom to start a church. Luke writes that they do find some Greeks who had previously converted to Judaism, as well as some who were ethnically Jewish, and quite a few of the city's leading women, the latter of which I am pleasantly surprised to see mentioned within Luke's writing. So these are the people to whom Paul later writes, and of which we have two of his letters. The epistles, or the letters to the Thessalonians, first and second. These are letters to whom Paul is writing back to this community that we now see beginning within Acts chapter 17. But not everyone who responds to Paul and Silas is doing so favorably. Because as their message and their actions have upset some of those who remain within the synagogue. Perhaps they were the religious leaders who were upset to having lost a number of their congregants to these new upstarts from afar. We also should remember that the official religion of the Roman Empire at this time is the cult of the emperor, as several of the emperors of the Roman Empire were deified as gods and were sought after or seen as divinely as appointed to their position as emperor. But these religious leaders who are irate, upset to say the least, incite a mob to seek justice and right the ways in which they feel that they were wronged. The mob charges Paul and Silas in absentia with the most serious of crimes, treason. Christians call Jesus the Son of God, and it's a term that we continue to use to this day. But what we sometimes do not know or even remember is that Jesus was not the first one to use this title. Rather, Caesar Augustus adopted this title, Son of God. And so it is that you can see how there would be conflict between these two groups. And so it is that Paul and Silas are fortunate to be able to escape with their lives with a little help from the church's membership late in the evening. But as we met for Bible study this week to discuss the scripture that we read earlier this morning, the question that was asked repeatedly within the group was if verses 5 and 6 were something that had been taken out of the Bible or out of the local newspaper. In reading these verses, it sounds a lot like what is happening around our community, around our country, and around our world. The establishment is reacting negatively to the challenge that has been brought against it and brought against the status quo. Minority voices condemning systems built to benefit the ones in power, but to oppress just about everyone else. The violence that ensues at the hands of the mob is not from those seeking justice, but is from the system responding in the only way that it thinks it knows how to behave, and yet is being challenged to think of new ways to respond. And the violence is not contained only to those who are directly involved within the situation, but spills out until all are encompassed by it. Violence begets violence. Hate begets hate, and the machinery of tyranny continues on. Caught up in the violence are the innocents, as the oppressors are unable to find the true agents of change. In our scripture, one of these people is named Jason. We don't know anything else about him other than his name, and that he was a believer, and that somehow the mob had seen him as being sympathetic to Paul and Silas. But in our current circumstances, these innocent people often go nameless, undocumented, or are rendered anonymous by those who are continuing to seek and to keep control. Without faces or names, the identity of those victims is wiped away and forgotten. The accusations brought by the mob against Silas and Paul in the latter half of verse 6 and 7 are probably not wholly unsubstantiated. And what I was wondering as I was reading these charges that were brought against them by the mob, and I'll read them again just very briefly here. These people, they're political agitators turning the world upside down. We want to expose their real intent that these agitators are trying to overturn Caesar's sensible decrees. They're saying that Jesus is king and not Caesar. But as I was reading these charges by the mob, I was wondering what if these charges were to become the church's job description? What might happen if the church was charged with trying to turn the world upside down? What are some ways that the world will look different if this is what it was that the church was trying to do? And I'm not just speaking within the political realm here, but just the world in general. And what if the church was indicted on not only saying, but seeking to follow the ways of Jesus rather than the ones who are saying that they are the ones in charge? What would happen if the church were to truly follow the ways of Jesus? Might this world be different if the church sought to align itself on the side of those who are being oppressed rather than being on the side of the oppressors? What if we sought to bless those who are poor, those who are hungry, those who weep, those whose rights continue to be trampled upon? What would happen if we were to put ourselves on their side? And how might things be different if we sought to change the things and trying to follow Jesus's example in our faith and in our lives? How might the church be different? How might our communities be different? How might our world be different? I realize that these are a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. A lot of questions and a lot of uncertainties to what these answers might be. And I have to admit that I don't know all the answers. I don't have all of them. We as a community probably have a lot of them collectively. But we also have more questions that we do not have the answers to, and that's okay. I believe that is one of the things that the church needs to admit, the church as a whole, not just our local congregation, but universally, that the church doesn't always have all the answers, but instead has questions that don't have answers to, and that's okay. But as we think about these questions on our own, or within our households, or within even small groups of friends, whether it be in Zoom or socially distanced from one another on the phone, or maybe even through snail mail, let us consider the answers. Let us ponder to ourselves and with those loved ones and friends, and even those with whom we may disagree, what the answers may be. And may we seek to live our lives in order that if these charges that were brought against Silas and Paul were levied against us, that we might also be found guilty. May it be so. Amen and amen. Pardon me while we move some items around. To share with you some joys and concerns and prayer requests that have also been shared with us.
All right. We got one from Elaine, and she says, prayers for families and communities divided by ideology. May we seek to listen for understanding and to actively seek ways to build bridges of connection instead of keeping up walls of division. Another one from Carol, and actually Mary seconded her comment. I am so grateful for the technology we have allowing me to attend church from my home. And the other Mary B says, Barbara S. and Mary B finally joined in worship. So we are so happy that you're present. I would like to extend a prayer out of concern and support for all healthcare workers right now as we're still trying to navigate all the changes that have happened and now all the new changes in healthcare. And Evan would like to ask for prayers for scientists working on a vaccine for COVID. I agree with you there, Evan. And I believe that's it right now.
We also light one candle for those joys, concerns, prayer requests that we have kept silent today. But we know that God knows what lies upon our hearts and our minds. Let us have a prayer together before joining together in our last hymn. Almighty God, we offer to you these joys and concerns. We ask for your healing upon us, upon our lives and our relationships, our friendships, for physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental healing, O God. We pray that you help us to bring unity, peace, and justice within our own lives and within the lives of our communities and our world. We gather today, O God, apart but together as a community. Continue to bless us with your spirit of comfort and of peace and of presence. Amen.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. This land is holy, and so are we. This land is holy, and so are we. This land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. This is where we are called is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
I just wanted to say, we didn't get a chance to say this before, but this song is called The Tide is Rising, and it was written by Rabbi Shoshona and Mira Friedman. And it's a beautiful song, and I thought it was really fitting for this time frame, and it's so easy to learn, so I hope we can sing it again sometime. I'm going to end with this song, Peace Be With You, prayers as we go through this week.
The tide is rising, and so are we. We are rising up.
Sorry, I want to pause this really quick here. There we go.